Hey, I hope you're not finding all of these historical videos too tiring. Uh, there aren't any more of those with the that I put on YouTube, but I've got some more information that I want to continue to share with you as we build through this history of Toyota. Now, so far we've made it up through the 50s and 60s with Deming and Duran teaching quality to companies throughout Japan in the 50s and early 60s. And you see the quality circles movement firing up in the 60s, and Duran writes some pretty cool articles about that in the mid 60s that we lost until the 80s. Uh, More on that later. In 1973, while Toyota was growing relatively steadily, 1973 we had a global oil crisis. And Japan is completely dependent on outside oil. And so when they couldn't get any oil and they couldn't turn it into gas, and they couldn't run anything, plants started shutting down. And when plants shut down, they typically send people home. Um, Toyota managed somehow not to have to shut down, and they didn't have to send their people home. So you can imagine how frustrating it might be if you work for a company like Mitsubishi and you get sent home furloughed, but your neighbor gets up every morning, hops on his bike, and rides into work to Toyota. I mean, you'll probably be asking pretty quickly what the heck's going on at Toyota. And so people started asking what the heck's going on at Toyota. And instead of being like most U.S. companies saying mind your own business, Toyota said, "Come in, we'll show you." And the way they managed to keep running was they turned off all the equipment and they parked all the forklifts, and any materials that came in, they repackaged them in man-sized, man-portable types of containers to move them through the facility so they can continue working. So that's like a fundamental difference between their philosophy and, let's say, Western philosophy. Here, we we measure return on assets and we expect the assets to continue working. And so we want the machinery to keep working, and then we view labor as an expense to be reduced. And so we reduce heads, and if we can automate and automate and automate, that's going to be the salvation for us. Well, at Toyota, it was the exact opposite. They put all the equipment on hold, kept the people working, and they did training and they did improvement projects and they did some problem solving, but they kept working at the lower output levels that they could work at. It's really a pretty fascinating way to think about how they had the freedom to not work toward that quarterly profit. So think about that. We'll be asking you to consider that with the problem you're going to be solving for your project. What's going to be the financial impact and what's going to motivate that financial impact? Okay, a little bit more later. Thanks.